Have you ever wondered what it's like to fast for an entire month without food or even water? For almost 2 billion Muslims, this is a spiritual practice they undertake each year during Ramadan. But why? And what's the significance behind this month-long observance? In this video, we'll explore the rich history and traditions of Ramadan, as well as show you how to prepare a truly unique dish enjoyed by Muslims during Ramadan. To truly understand this holy month, we need to go back to the roots. What is Ramadan? Well, Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, and the word itself translates to intense heat in Arabic, reflecting the fact that the month of Ramadan originated during the hottest time of the year in the Arabian desert. And it was during this month, in the year 610, that the very first revelation of the Quran occurred to the Prophet Muhammad. He was meditating in a cave on Mount Hira when the angel Gabriel appeared to him for the first time. When he appeared to him, he commanded that the Prophet would read. Initially taken aback, the Prophet replied that he did not know how to read. The angel then squeezed him tightly and repeated the command, "Read." This time, the Prophet recited the words that the angel revealed to him, which would later become the first 5 verses of chapter 96 of the Quran. Those specific verses were, "Read in the name of thy Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Read, and thy Lord is most generous, who taught man by the pen, taught man what he never knew." This event marked the beginning of the revelation of the Quran and the mission of the Prophet as a messenger of God. But what happened next? Well, in remembrance of this event, the month of Ramadan became a period of fasting, making it one of the oldest and most significant religious traditions in existence. In fact, it is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, along with professing faith in one God, performing daily prayers, giving to charity, and undertaking a pilgrimage to Mecca. These 5 pillars are the fundaments of the Islamic faith and are mandatory for every Muslim. Now, while the month of Ramadan seems like a challenging month, for Muslims it's actually a time of joy, celebration, and togetherness that is truly unique. They see it as an opportunity to strengthen their faith, reconnect with their community, and spread kindness and compassion to those around them. If you know any Muslims, you might have noticed that Ramadan seems to start on a different date each year. That's because the Islamic calendar is based on a lunar cycle. This means that one month corresponds to the time it takes the moon to go from non-visible to a full moon, which takes around 29.5 days. As a result, Ramadan occurs about 10 to 12 days earlier each year based on the Gregorian calendar. So, Ramadan can occur during the summer, when the days are longer and fasting can last up to 20 hours, or during the winter, when it can be as short as 6 hours. So it really depends on the season. But what exactly happens during the month of Ramadan? Well, for an entire month, Muslims are required to abstain from any food, drinks, smoking, or physical intimacy during daylight hours. This means no breakfast, no lunch, no snacks, or water until the sun sets. The main purpose of fasting during Ramadan is to develop self-control and empathy for those who are less fortunate. However, there's also a broader sense of fasting that includes abstaining from any false speech or action and from arguing or fighting. In other words, fasting isn't just about physical abstinence, it's also about spiritual and moral purification. That's why most Muslims see the month of Ramadan as an opportunity to get closer to God, start praying, and strive to become a better version of themselves. But fasting was not exclusively practiced by Muslims. In fact, the Quran mentions in verse 2, chapter 183, "O you who have believed, decreed upon you is fasting, as it was decreed upon those before you." But who exactly is being referred to as those before you? Well, it refers to the followers of Judaism and Christianity who also practiced fasting. But there's evidence that fasting existed even before that. In fact, fasting was practiced by ancient cultures dating back as far as 3000 BC. Civilizations like ancient Egypt, ancient Greek, and Babylon used to fast for religious reasons. Who knows how far this tradition goes? But that may be a topic for a future video. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in. Anyway, let's get back to topic. We now know what Ramadan is, but how did the Muslims fast in the early 600s, and how is it different with today's fasting? Well, the early Muslims were living a life of oppression and hardship. So back then, they didn't have much to go by. To begin their fast, Muslims would wake up for the pre-dawn meal, known as the suhoor. A typical meal for suhoor would consist of dates and water. That's it. It's quite the contrast with the suhoors Muslims have today, which include foods as milk and yogurt, which are rich in protein and calcium, which can help to keep the body strong and healthy during the day. Bread and oatmeal are also commonly consumed because of the richness in complex carbohydrates, which can provide a slow release of energy throughout the day. And last but not least, water. Drinking plenty of water during suhoor is also important for staying hydrated during the long hours of fasting. After a long day of fasting and attaining to their everyday chores like any other day, Muslims would then break their fast at sunset with friends and family. This meal is called iftar and would typically be broken with dates or water, and most of the time that would be pretty much all they ate. Otherwise, they would be happy to have any types of food such as breads or fruits. After breaking their fast, Muslims would then pray Maghrib, which is the fourth of the 5 daily prayers in Islam and is performed just after sunset. This is quite the contrast with the iftars we have today, where we have multiple courses after each other like soups made from meats or vegetables, meat and rice dishes like biryani or kapsa, and even desserts. But the purpose of fasting is actually not to suffer or starve yourself, but rather a test to control yourself, your speech, and your actions. So it's fine to have dishes like biryanis or falafels for iftar, as long as no food is going to waste. Speaking of iftar, the recipe we are making for today's iftar is called falafels. Falafel is a common popular dish from the Middle East. They are made from ground chickpeas mixed with herbs and spices and then fried until crispy. In order to make this recipe, add 500 grams or 3 cups of chickpeas to a big bowl. Add a teaspoon of baking powder and fill the bowl with plenty of water to let them soak overnight. The next day, drain and pat the chickpeas dry. In a powerful blender, add the drained chickpeas together with 16 grams or 1 cup of fresh parsley leaves, an equal amount of cilantro, 16 grams or a half a cup of fresh dill, 1 small onion, 7 cloves of garlic, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, 1 tablespoon of coriander, and 1 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Now cover the blender and mix all the ingredients very well. Now as you can see, this didn't really work out. I used a milkshake blender for this in the hopes it would work, but without adding water it gets stuck. So I had to transfer the mixture into a food processor and blend it once again. Mine was a small one, so I had to do this step 2 times. Mix the ingredients with the help of a spoon occasionally and blend until you get this texture. It should be a bit of dry and flaky. Next, transfer the falafel mixture to a container and cover it with a plastic wrap. We have to refrigerate this for about 1 hour. This will help the mixture to set and fuse all the aromas together. Once about an hour has passed or you are ready to cook them, take the mixture out of the fridge and add 1 teaspoon of baking powder along with 2 tablespoons of sesame seed. Mix one last time and take the pieces of dough and shape them into balls or patties like so. Once you have all your balls ready, heat up some frying oil on medium-high and carefully drop the balls in the oil. Let them fry for about 3 to 5 minutes or until they are crispy and medium brown on the outside. Once they are golden brown on the outside, you can take them out of the oil and place them onto a plate with paper towels in order to drain the excess oil. And voila, there we have the most simple and delicious falafels you can enjoy during Ramadan. Now let's go back to what the first Muslims did after breaking their fast during Ramadan. During the final years of the Prophet, he began to perform extra night prayers in Ramadan called Tarawih. His companions started joining him in the mosque, and as the numbers grew, the Prophet became concerned that they would regard it as an obligation, so he continued his prayers alone at home. 10 years after the Prophet's death, the leader of the Muslims, Caliph Umar, saw Muslims scattered around the mosque praying the extra night prayers that the Prophet did in separate groups, so he established a congregational prayer to unify their worship. Since that time, congregational Tarawih has become a defining feature of Ramadan and one through which the Quran is recited in its entirety. Since that time, the core rituals and traditions of Ramadan have remained unchanged, but the spread of Islam over the globe gave texture and diversity to the global Ramadan experience. For example, in Ottoman times, drummers in Turkey woke people for the pre-dawn meal known as the suhoor, and similarly in Morocco, an afar or town crier dressed in traditional Moroccan robe and leather slippers to roam the streets, rousing people to the sounds of an instrument like a horn or a trumpet. One particular dietary development that aided worshippers to perform the long night prayers was coffee, possibly derived from the Arabic word kahwa, originally meaning wine, or from kuwa, meaning power of strength. When coffee was cultivated in Yemen in the 14th or 15th century, it was first consumed in spiritual centers and helped Muslims stay alert for the nightly Ramadan prayers. In the 11th century, during the Fatimid dynasty in Egypt, a Ramadan lantern or fanoush became a symbol of the month Ramadan, perhaps to symbolize the spiritual light and blessings that Ramadan brings. Today, intricate lanterns are seen lighting up homes and shops and lining the streets. Egypt was also said to have instigated the iftar cannon, or mitfa al-iftar, where a cannon was fired to dramatically announce the time for breaking the fast. This tradition is said to have begun around 200 years ago, although some historians trace it further back to the Mamluk period of the 15th century, when the Sultan in Cairo was test firing a new cannon at the time of sunset prayers. Locals thought the Sultan was signaling the time to break their fast, and seeing how much joy it brought to the people, the Sultan made it a daily Ramadan routine. Towards the end of Ramadan, Zakat al-Fitr, or alms of the breaking of the fast, was a duty on every able Muslim, in which you would give food to poor people or people in need. Over time, though, this changed into a monetary practice where Muslims now typically gave money to mosques or charities for distribution to the poor people on their behalf. On the first day after the month of Ramadan, Muslims celebrate the end of Ramadan known as Eid ul-Fitr. On this day, Muslims gather together for a special communal prayer, which was established by Prophet Muhammad as a day of community and celebration. To start the day on a sweet note, it has become tradition to eat something sweet on Eid morning. This has earned the festival the nickname of the Sweet Festival or Sweet Eid. In the time of the Prophet Muhammad, the day began with a simple breakfast of dates. However, as Islam spread to different parts of the world, the celebration evolved and gave rise to a variety of sweet dishes. For example, in the Indian subcontinent, it is common to enjoy sheer kurma, a milky dessert made with vermicelli, nuts, and dates. In Somalia, people enjoy kambabur, a special Eid bread that is covered with sugar and yogurt. These sweet treats reflect the diversity of the Islamic culture and the joy of coming together to celebrate Eid. It's crazy to think that what was initially practiced by around 100 Muslims in the 7th century is now emulated by around 2 billion people around the world, who continue to follow the tradition of the Prophet while celebrating Ramadan in their own culturally unique ways. Thank you for making it all the way through the video. If you had fun or learned anything today, make sure to like and comment on the video. And if you would like to see more content, consider subscribing to the channel. That stuff really helps. Until the next video, peace.